Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. So good to be back. I haven't been live at the Waterhole for a while. My name is Maxine Gaines and really excited to join you all for what I think is going to be an amazing afternoon because look at what we're starting with. How amazing. Some southern ground hornbills at Oldonyo. This is a bird we don't often see on the cameras, or certainly I haven't seen much on the cameras, so very, very special to see them. They look quite hot. They're busy um, panting, opening their mouths. When they do that, it's a bit like when a crocodile opens their mouths. They are um, allowing evaporation of saliva from the inside of the mouth, which then allows them to cool down. So I think it must be pretty hot up there. Catherine, lovely to have you on board. Lenny, Penelope, Marco, Joan, welcome everyone. Yay. Lovely to be on board with you all this afternoon. Interesting to see these southern ground hornbills because up in Kenya, where Oldonyo Lodge is, you get two different species of ground hornbills, which I will go into in a minute. But before I do, please feel free to chat to me. This is a live and interactive show. We'd love to have your questions, comments. Really looking forward to chatting to you all this afternoon. So please do that. You can do that on our website, and you can do that, I think, on YouTube and on Twitter or X. So please do that. How beautiful is this chap? So as I was saying, there's two different species of ground hornbills up in Kenya, but the other species, which is commonly known as the Abyssinian ground hornbill, it's a little bit further north than Oldonyo, as far as I remember, north and to the west. So the one that occurs at Oldonyo is definitely the same as the species that we get down here, southern ground hornbills. They look so comfortable in the grass. You don't often see them just kind of relaxing on the ground like this. Normally they're very busy walking around looking for any food. And then when they relax, you tend to find them up on a perch. So this is actually very sweet seeing them having a little snooze in the grass. Amazing to see how green everything is up there compared to what's going on down in southern Africa at the moment, where we definitely are swiftly moving into winter and everything is quite brown. Up there you don't really have a winter on the equator. You've got the long rains and the short rains, the wet season, the dry season, and it definitely looks like everything is beautiful and green there at the moment in the rainy season, one of the rainy seasons. Spaz, you say it's a surprise to see ground hornbills at Oldonyo. It really is. It's a lovely surprise. I never get tired of seeing ground hornbills. They're one of my absolute favorite birds to watch. Eyes are open, but it definitely looks like he could be wanting to snooze. Interesting what the one is doing behind, because he kind of opened his beak and then he kind of nosedived into the grass. Very sweet little, wow, family of 5. So what we would have there is two adults and 3 sub-adults, although those sub-adults look very much like they are kind of mature already. But let's go. We've got an elephant playing with a camera at one of our other waterholes. So let's go and have a look what's happening there, and hopefully we can come back to these guys. Oh wow, Serendella and thorny bush. Let's hope that the elephant doesn't decide to use the camera as a scratching implement. It won't go well for the camera.
We have just had our efforts paid off. These amazing animals in our waterholes. You can see this one that was playing with the camera earlier is a youngster. Husks are quite small, even though it looks huge because of how the proximity to the camera. It's actually not an adult. Typical youngsters, very curious, very playful. You can see the water's not that deep, but the little one is just thoroughly enjoying having a proper swim. I always find it incredible how the little ones can be kind of frolicking around in between the adults' feet, The adults never seem to step on them. They always seem to know exactly where their babies are, where the youngsters are. And look at that. Oh, sweet, man. Sorry about that, everyone. My phone was not on silent. I just rectified that. Lucy, you asking if dirty water is healthy for animals. I'm assuming you mean for drinking. And these animals, they don't have the luxury of drinking clean bottled water, or water that's been purified, or water that's gone through any form of filter. Right from birth, their gut bacteria is adapted to deal with it. But from the time they start drinking water, they are drinking water with mud and bacteria and all kinds of other additions in it. And so from a very young age, they're adapted to it. They have gut bacteria that can cope with whatever they drink. So I think, yes, it's not bad for them to drink this water, but only because they have they've done it from the time they were small. If you took perhaps a zoo elephant that had been fed purified water or clean water and put it into an ecosystem like this, you might find that it would struggle because its body isn't accustomed to all the germs and bacteria and fungi and algae and things that it would have to drink. So I think an important part of them being able to do this is the fact that they've done it since birth. And remember that youngsters, when they pass through the birth canal of the mother, they basically take in a lot of the bacteria and fungi and viruses that are in her environment from the start, from birth, and their bodies are already learning how to cope with that. And that microbiome that's so important in their guts is given to them by their mothers through the birth process, and that microbiome becomes very important for helping them to cope with their environment and the specific germs and bacteria that can be found in their environment. It's one of the reasons why soft releases are good if you are translocating animals from one environment to another, because those animals need the chance to become accustomed to germs and parasites and new things that happen to be in the new environment. And so to just dump an animal into its new environment without being able to monitor it and make sure it's okay, you're not going to have as much success. So often when we relocate animals, we tend to go the soft release option, which is you put them into a boma in the new environment and you expose them to all of those new parasites and germs in a much more controlled environment where you can treat them if need be, and just monitor that they're actually coping. David, good day. It's lovely to have you on board with us. You asking, are animal coalitions mostly temporary or do they endure for longer periods? Oh, sorry, that's Ivan asking that. Ivan, I suppose it depends on the species. With elephants, you wouldn't really call it a coalition, but you might find a bunch of young bulls hanging around with an old bull for a time, or even with giraffes, that sometimes happens where there'll be these loose kind of aggregations of bulls or animals that stick together for a while. And then in other species, a coalition might be a very long-lasting thing, like, for instance, cheetah. Brothers that are born together would spend their entire lives together. Oh, what has upset them now? Something has upset them. Amazing how the whole herd responds. I'm not quite sure what happened. They either heard something, smelt something. So yes, coalitions depends on the species as to whether they're going to be permanent or temporary. It seems like we've got something at Founder's Lodge, so let's go over and see what's visiting the waterhole. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of very unhappy elephants. Let's leave them for a bit and see what's happening at Founder's Lodge. Oh wow. Founder's Lodge in the Eastern Cape. And we have a beautiful, looks like it could be a big rhino bull. He almost looks like he was feeding on a little bit of mud there at the side of the water, which is not uncommon with rhino. They do sometimes feed on soil to get the nutrients they need, especially these very rich, or these very red soils, should I say, in South Africa. The red soil's very full of iron and other minerals that are important. He's got a wet chin. He looks like he might have been drinking already. His feet and his chin are wet, indicating that he's probably already had a nice drink. Some lovely plain zebra in the background there. And you can see his security bracelet. As a way for our rangers to keep tabs of these animals at all time, make sure that they are safe from poachers. You can also see some notches in his ears. Also just a way to identify so that they can keep tabs of who's been seen, who hasn't been seen. Kelsey, you say you love white rhinos, and Ollie, you're asking if it's sharpening its horn. So, Kelsey, yes. Sorry, Ollie, they do tend to rub their horn like that as a way of not necessarily sharpening it. It might have that, sorry, I think the camera froze, so we're going back to thorny bush, but I'm going to keep chatting about the rhino just for a second. So the rhinos will do that, and I'm sure that it does perhaps keep the horn sharp, but its main function is just to keep the horn clear and clean. So they often congregate or accumulate a lot of mud on their horns or dirt on the horns, and so rubbing it against rocks or trunks or things like that can actually just keep it clear of all the debris that they accumulate. But I'm pretty sure that by constantly rubbing it, they also probably do help to keep it sharp. But once a rhino's been dehorned, that horn, the tip of the horn, never ever gets as sharp again as it would if they hadn't been dehorned. So you never have that very pointy horn that you have from a non-dehorned rhino. It seems like most of the herd has left with whatever caused that rumpus when we were watching them earlier. There's still a few hanging around. These are probably the bulls. The females and calves have gone off. Something upset them. And these are probably all young bulls that have remained behind. Lucas, you're asking, has the white rhino population started to recover yet? Gosh, that's a very difficult question to answer. So in certain reserves, no. Poaching is still a
a massive issue. But in some reserves, that have really gone the extra mile to protect their rhinos, the populations are looking healthy. So it just depends on the reserve that you're talking about. Certain reserves really need to up their game in terms of protecting the rhino, and I'm very sad to say it's mostly the government-run reserves that just haven't prioritized rhino protection as much as they should. Whereas a lot of the privately run reserves have really done a fantastic job and are now kind of the beacons of hope in rhino conservation and the pool from which rhinos are going to have to be drawn to repopulate the government reserves. So yeah, our government has failed rhinos, unfortunately. I'm not ashamed to say that. I don't mind picking a fight with our government when it comes to conservation. They really haven't done a very good job at all. There's so much corruption. There's not nearly enough money that's been spent to protect our rhinos, whereas the private reserves have really led the way. So many private reserves, rhino populations are very healthy. Government reserves not so much.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
Best sighting I've presented, I found myself with wild dogs. We chased the dogs around, chased them around. They ate an impala, we got the end of that. Then another impala went into Gowrie Dam down the road there, and the wild dogs went around. Eventually the impala came close to the bank. One wild dog went and grabbed it and then just pulled it out and just did what wild dogs do. It was an emotional experience, but it was very, very special.
Out here, every moment counts. As a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7 and rewind if you want to catch something again. Enjoy behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and early access to travel offers. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Little tussle between these two enemies. Oh, Eagle Lover, you've just raised a question that it's just broken my heart today to hear about a further vulture poisoning incident. I just am at a loss as to what to say about how it can be prevented, other than let me just change the angle of the camera for us.
Okay, so I don't think we're going to see much more of these Ellies other than the swishing tail, because he's manually changed the angle of the camera for us. So let's head over to Vic Falls and we can chat about vultures while we watch them. Yeah, so Eagle Lover, I'm angry today. I'm heartbroken. I'm just at a loss. I was chatting to my family the other day and just saying, if this carries on, I can honestly see the extinction of vultures in my lifetime. It's the most, when and I'm not downplaying rhino poaching by saying this, so please don't misinterpret what I'm saying now. But when a rhino's poached, it's normally one or two that are killed in at one time. These vulture poisoning incidents are killing hundreds in one go of critically endangered animals. And it makes me angry when I read in the press that it's traditional uses. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I don't care if it's not traditional. This vulture poisoning has happened because, firstly, they're beacons for poaching. They're beacons that alert rangers to some other species that have been poached. That is not a tradition. And secondly, there was a massive uptake in vulture poisonings when the lottery was introduced into South Africa, because people thought that it would give them the ability to predict the future, because there's a misunderstanding that the way vultures find their kills is by predicting the future. So that is not traditional. I'm sorry. Don't hide behind the traditional use. It's my culture. It's my tradition. I don't even know what to say to someone who says that. It's got absolutely nothing to do with any form of traditional use whatsoever. And our government needs to come to the party. The education system in every single school needs to focus on this. We need to change the syllabus. We need to educate kids from the youngest, from the time that they go to school. They need to learn about human wildlife conflict, and they need to learn about the impact that is having on our wildlife. And again, I'm criticizing the South African government because they're doing very little to help. It's up to the private sector all the time to come in and be the superheroes and try to fix these kinds of things. And yeah, I'm just, as I say, I'm heartbroken. I look at these vultures now and I just wonder, well, my children have seen vultures, but will my grandchildren ever see them? I don't know. There was a massive problem in India, probably in the 90s. It could have been the late 80s into the 90s, where vultures nearly went extinct because of a poison. I think it was called diclofenac or something like that, but it was an organic kind of agricultural, or should I say an organophosphate agricultural poison. But it was poisoning by accident. The vultures, so it was animals that were treated with the specific pesticide or whatever it was. And then the animals died, and the vultures ate these animals that had been treated with veterinary medicine, basically. So the cow gets sick, the farmer treats the cow with this particular chemical in the hope that it's going to cure the cow. Cow dies anyway. Vultures come down and they get secondary poisoning, but it wasn't intentional. It wasn't aimed at killing vultures. And so there was then a way of reversing that situation in India. So they could say, okay, which are these chemicals that when we treat our livestock with them, they cause this irreparable harm? Okay, let's look at using better chemicals, environmentally friendly chemicals or medicines to treat our livestock. And so there's been a reversal, and it's still taken a huge time or a long time for the population to recover. Here in South Africa, we're dealing with something completely different. It's not an unintentional poisoning. It is someone who is intentionally going out and killing vultures intentionally. So that those people, if they are caught, they need to feel the full force of the law. They need to be put in prison for a life sentence, 100 life sentences.
vulture life is as important as a human life. They should be sentenced to life imprisonment for it is ecological genocide what is happening to our vultures, and I just have no words. I absolutely have no words to don't know what the answer is, other than to say we need to change our education system, and the government needs to step up and make some changes. Poisons like that shouldn't be available to the general public. I mean, I live in a poison-free household. I don't even have insecticide sprays in my house to kill things like mosquitoes, and I just believe that poisons should not be available on the shelf. There are ways to live in our environment without using poisons, and if none of us had access to poison, then this couldn't happen. And some people might say, well, that's a very drastic solution, but you know what? Sometimes drastic, horrific incidents need drastic solutions, and I just don't believe that poisons do anybody any good at any time. Even agricultural poisons, poisoning the food that we eat is not doing us any favors, and so they just shouldn't be available. We need to find different ways of living in the environment, and if the poisons weren't available, they wouldn't be able to poison the vultures. I think it needs to be as drastic as that. But also, I believe education is key, and we need to educate our children to the value of these birds and to the consequences of them not being around. Anyway, on that little rant, I think we've got some more elephants at Tembe, so let's head closer to my home, just up the north coast from where I live, to Tembe. Lovely, relaxed group of ellies. Still a little bit greener in KZN than up in the Timbavati, which is typical, much more tropical climate here. Love it when ellies do that, when they rest their trunk on a tusk. Wow, he's got beautiful tusks, this boy. Look at that. Typical Tembe old bulls. They are quite famous for their long tusks, these boys. Here a gorgeous bushrack in the background. Such a difficult bird to see. You hear them all the time, but to actually get a sighting of one, they are so shy.
at that. He's scratching the inside of his leg. So cute. It's amazing to see that though, and to realize that they, as heavy as they are, they're absolutely fine with balancing on 3 legs or sometimes even 2 legs. The famous Boswell elephant up in Marnapools, who stands up on his hind legs very often. They are very, very capable of most incredible feats of balance when you consider their body size. Having a little scratch behind his ear, that big boy. Seems to also be mostly bulls here. I can't actually see any cows. Just an aggregation of bulls.
Experience the magic of the wild on an unforgettable 4-night safari at Mabula Nature Reserve, hosted by the one and only Stephen Falconbridge. With Steve as your private guide, you'll gain incredible insights into Africa's wildlife, leaving with knowledge and memories to last a lifetime. Get hands-on with conservation, track elusive cheetahs, and even take to the skies on a hot air balloon ride. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive. South Africa's wild places are closer than you think, because Federal Airlines brings them to you. From the calm of our FedAir lounge to the smooth boarding of our trusted fleet, we take care of the journey so you can enjoy the adventure. Our flights go beyond the ordinary, connecting you to South Africa's most remote and extraordinary locations. Federal Airlines, your gateway to the South African wild. Step into the heart of Africa from the comfort of your home.
Female leopard tracks over here.
Join our expert guides for a live 3-hour safari where every moment is real, unscripted, and unforgettable. Ask questions,
Animals rely on their senses.
share your thoughts, and be part of the experience as we explore together. Safari Live.
During the breeding season, the chicks need calcium to grow properly and to develop, strong bones so that they can fly. And without calcium in their diets, they develop deformities. And one of the main ways that they get that calcium is through the action of hyenas. Hyenas crushing bones and leaving little bits of bone fragments, because the vulture's beak is not strong enough to tear off bone fragments or crush bone to get the little bone fragments that they can then swallow and take back to their chicks. But hyenas crush bones and leave bone fragments behind, and that is critical for the vultures for their calcium requirements. And so in places where hyena numbers are down because of normally human persecution, it becomes very difficult for the vultures to have or to maintain calcium levels or have enough calcium in their diets. And so one of the ways of ensuring that there is enough calcium is using these vulture restaurants where the landowners, whoever is in charge of the restaurant, be it a conservation body or the park, they can actually physically crush bone with hammers, and then that bone is then kind of scattered along with whatever other remains are put out, and those vultures can then pick up the bone fragments, which are very, very important. So the vulture restaurants play an important role in conservation. And equally so for the marabou storks, who would also utilize the bone fragments. It seems like the storks are being bullied by the vultures in this particular scenario. Visited a few vulture restaurants in my time, and it's always a very special experience to go and see these vultures coming down. There's a very famous one at Giant's Castle in the Drakensberg in South Africa, where mainly Cape vultures and my absolute favorite bird in the whole world, the bearded vulture, come down for food. And it is critical to their survival in that Drakensberg region. They need mountains to breed, but in the Drakensberg region, hyenas have basically been completely exterminated. And so without the vulture restaurant and the crushed bone, those vultures would really be in trouble, those populations. I also did a study on predators and carcasses as part of my master's degree, and really interesting when vultures, the area I did it in is a place where pretty much most of the vultures have been exterminated. So it was a game reserve surrounded by a lot of farmland, mining land. There were leopard on the reserve, there were brown hyena, but I didn't see a single vulture on the reserve in the year that I did my studies there. And carcasses can sit in the landscape for a long time if there's no vultures. Firstly, because predators do use vultures as a beacon to find carcasses. And then secondly, the vultures open up the carcasses. So without the vultures to open up the carcasses, the predators don't actually get access to it. They find it very, very difficult to get access to a lot of the bigger carcasses. If you have a carcass that sits in the landscape for an extended period of time, you get diseases in that landscape for an extended period of time. You have enough time for bacteria to breed on that carcass, And those diseases can spread to your livestock or your game or whatever it might be. So vultures actually perform a really critical function in taking away, carcasses that could potentially cause the spread of disease. Wow, that marabou stork just got a huge chunk of whatever food. Oh no, he decided to leave it. I think it's amazing to see how the vultures actually tend to bully the storks, even though the marabou storks are bigger. The vultures just have kind of more aggressive personalities, I suppose. Love to know how many vultures get fed by this vulture restaurant. If you run a vulture restaurant, you've got to be very, very careful about the meat that you bring to your vulture restaurant. You have to make sure that the animal was not euthanized using any form of veterinary medicines, because the typical drugs that are used to euthanize things like horses or cows or large animals are the drugs that will kill vultures. So they get secondary poisoning from consuming meat from a carcass where the carcass has been euthanized using drugs. So the farmers and conservation bodies that run these vulture restaurants have to be very, very careful about where they get their meat from and how the animals that are the source of the meat were actually killed. It sounds like a very macabre thing to talk about, but it's something that initially, when vulture restaurants were first kind of proposed and people first started doing them, it was something that they didn't think about at the time, and there were a couple of tragedies. Everyone learns from their mistakes, but it is now well known that if you are providing food for vultures at a vulture restaurant, typically the animal needs to have either died of natural causes or be shot rather than injected to euthanize it. Deb Davis, you're saying you haven't seen this cam recently. Yeah, I think it's been a while, but I think it's an appropriate one to be watching today, because we really do need to focus on our vultures, and people's perceptions of them need to change, because people's perceptions govern how they spend their money. If you're a person that feels strongly about conservation and you perhaps want to give money every month to some form of conservation, the cute and cuddly creatures, or the ones that are perceived to be cute and cuddly, tend to garner the most funds, and the ones that everyone thinks are not so cute and cuddly, it's harder to raise money for them. And so as a population, we need to change our perception of vultures. They really, if you have a close-up look at a vulture, they are not ugly. They are beautiful. They have they are just magnificent birds. And we need to foster that perception of them being just incredible birds, helpful birds that perform a really critical role in our environment. in order to try and get them the help that they need, the funding that they need, and the protection that they need. It's amazing how quickly they also consume the food that they've been given. If you think when we first crossed over here, you could almost not see the red soil for the number of vultures around, but they've obviously eaten most of what was given to them now. And there's just a few hanging around, picking up the scraps. Looking at the one vulture there, kind of off to the left, behind the marabou stalk that's on the left. Don't know if it's a white-headed vulture. It just looks like it's got a very light pale color. It's probably a hooded, but its head just looked quite pale compared to, but its body, I think it must be a hooded. Its body size doesn't look big enough for a white-headed, but very difficult from this distance and this angle to be 100% sure.
My heart is pounding at the moment.
We are here in one of the best places in the world to see tigers.
Every guide in Africa has been on an endless quest for the ultimate bush wear. Until now. Rugged Wear has a huge range of amazing bush gear for every wild situation. In the midday heat, those chilly winter mornings, in the storms of summer. Rugged Wear has the bush kit for every wild occasion. Locally made in South Africa, crafted with precision, stitched with quality.
My full name is Mpho Tikani. I grew up in Soweto. My first animal that I filmed said to dog. Okay, no, it's my first animal that I filmed, I think it was an impala. Best sighting ever, I would say it was actually this year, 2024. But it was at this Cedric when we had Mulwati and TP on a warthog kill. I think we have to cut it.
Out here, every wild moment matters, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel, ad-free 24/7, where you can even rewind and watch something again. Get access to behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and access to early travel offers. It is the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Owl in the background there, one of our mainly diurnal owls. Lovely to hear that. Viv, you say you've never seen one walk like that. Yes, they do often raise their body above, kind of above the level of the ground when they walk. Sometimes if they're going really slowly, they'll drag themselves along the ground, but I have seen crocodiles, especially when they're wanting to move fast, raise themselves up above the ground. I suppose it just reduces the friction between their belly and the ground. We've got some really noisy birds in the background, the go-away birds, and then lots of spur fowls calling. Calvin, you're asking, are crocodiles endangered? No. At this stage, definitely not endangered. Their populations are pretty healthy throughout most of the wilderness areas of Africa. Obviously, outside of protected areas, you don't generally find them, as is the case with most animals. They're quite badly persecuted outside of protected areas, but within protected areas, their populations are healthy. Lovely little group of wildebeest and zebra coming down for a drink. Sandy Franklin, you're asking, what are the blue-colored birds? Sandy, to be honest, I didn't actually see any blue-colored birds. Just trying to think what birds would be here that would be blue. Could be starlings, but I'm guessing because I actually didn't see. I was paying attention to the crocodile. I didn't notice any blue-colored birds, to be honest. Eagle lover, you're asking if vultures are drawn to poisoned carcasses because food is not always available. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just, if you go to an area like a game reserve, like Northern Kruger, where there's a decent vulture population, and then you lace a carcass as big as an elephant's with poison, an elephant just naturally is going to draw a lot of vultures, an elephant carcass. It's a massive carcass. And so I don't think they're necessarily drawn to the poison carcasses because there isn't food available. I just think naturally they are drawn to carcasses, and if there's no competition at the carcasses because lions haven't killed the animal or whatever, it's just lying there dead, poisoned, the vultures are just going to arrive en masse and feed en masse. But those carcasses are very, very dangerous for other predators as well. If a lion or a hyena were to eat that, they're also going to succumb to the poison. So it's not just the vultures that are threatened. And I believe that it's a big problem in Northern Kruger, the trade in body parts of not just vultures, but lions, hyenas. It's a huge problem, and it needs to be dealt with by our government, unfortunately. As you're asking, what is my favorite animal? Is it a leopard? And what is my least favorite? Odd question. So definitely leopard. I've been a lover of leopards for a very, very, very long time. Leopard's definitely my favorite. I grew up in a family that went to the bush a lot. But growing up, sightings of leopards were very few and far between. And from a very, very early age, I had these beautiful nature calendars that my dad used to get
And he would have them on his wall in his office for the year, and then when the year was finished, he'd give me the calendars that I could then kind of cut up and put on my bedroom walls. And most of them were by a photographer by the name of Lex Hess, and I didn't know much about him except for the fact that he just got the most incredible photos of leopards. And I would sit there thinking, how did he get these beautiful pictures of leopards when we go to the Kruger Park so often, and we've caught a fleeting glimpse of a leopard here or there, but just never good enough to photograph. And so I had all these beautiful pictures of Lex Hess's leopards all plastered all over my bedroom walls. And unbeknownst to me, my very first job as a game ranger was at Londolozi, and only after getting to Londolozi did I realize that this was the place that Lex Hess worked, and this was the place where he took these incredible photographs. So yeah, from a very early age I was intrigued by leopards, and have been ever since. They're amazing animals. I feel very privileged to have been able to spend as much time with them as I have. My least favorite animal, gosh, that's humans, I think, probably. If I have to be perfectly honest, I don't really need to think about it. I think humans are my least favorite animal. We are a species that is doing a lot of damage to the planet. In full knowledge that we're doing a lot of damage to the planet. But yeah, I think if there was one species that I think the planet would probably not be too sad to see the back of, it would be us. So yeah, humans probably my least favorite. Oh, Sandy, you're asking about the blue-winged birds with the vultures. Okay, so those were marabou storks. They're not actually blue as such. They're more of a grayish color, but I think it was just the way that the kind of sunlight was hitting their feathers. But they're not really blue. It was just something to do with the light that made them look blue. They're more of a slate grey color, really. But Kaz, I love all animals. I'm always the one in the household that's rescuing the spiders and taking them outside. I don't use pesticides, but I just believe that they're just horrible things in the environment. If there's a snake found in the garden, I'm always the one that's taking it away from whoever's scared of it and moving it somewhere else. And I love animals. I love all animals. Insects, I try and garden to attract insects to the garden, which then in turn attract birds and chameleons. And I love all animals, and some humans, but not most humans. Avuyile, you are asking, what is the top speed of a crocodile? I have no idea. What I can tell you is that on land they can't maintain a run for very long. They have to, it's a very short burst of speed. But to be completely honest, I have no idea what the top speed of a crocodile is. So I'm just Googling it now. I'm cheating. The fastest land speed recorded for a crocodile is 17 kilometers an hour. So yeah, in a short burst, that's probably enough. But a crocodile very seldom hunts on land. It doesn't feel safe on land, and its advantage is not there on land because it's seen. So they generally hunt in the water, so they don't really need to go particularly fast on land. Their speed is normally to get them to the safety of the water. Okay, we're going to go now, I think, to Onguma, where we have some birds. Let's go and see what birds are visiting Onguma.
Well, we've got what looks like a great white egret and some ringneck doves. So you get 3 different egrets that white egrets, should I say, that you would find in water bodies in this part of the world. You get the intermediate egret, and then you get the great white egret, and then the little egret. Now, I know this is definitely not a little egret, because I saw him lift his feet up, and I could see that he did not have bright yellow feet. So it's either a great white or an intermediate, and it can be quite tricky to tell them apart when you don't have any scale. The great white is a much bigger bird, but when you're looking at it through the lens of a camera and you don't have anything else next to it that you can really compare it to, then great white and intermediate can be quite difficult to tell apart. But there is one way of doing it. When his legs are sticking out of the water like this, top of the leg of a great white egret is blackish, and the tops of the leg of an intermediate egret is more yellowish. So because I can see the tops of his legs, I'm going with great white egret because I can see the blackish color of the top of the leg. Great white egret is a big bird. It's about the same size as a grey heron, so they are not small.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website. Safari, wine, and waterfalls. The ultimate African adventure. Sip South Africa's finest wines. Experience a world-class safari among Africa's iconic wildlife. And stand in front of Victoria Falls, one of the natural wonders of the world. All this can be yours with Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Because they tend to encounter more prey, like frogs or fish, whereas a heron or an egret conserves energy by just staying very, very still, but then they don't get as much energy in return. So it's 2 very different hunting strategies, which both seem to work. If you don't spend as much energy, you don't need as much energy in return. And if you're walking around
shuffling your feet or moving your beak through the water, you're spending more energy, and so you actually need more food in return to balance that. So very, very different and interesting hunting strategies. Julian, you're saying the gape line seems to extend behind the eye, which is another way of telling the great white from the yellow bills. Yes, I agree. What have we got coming down here? Some zebra. Are not really coming down, they're more just hanging around the waterhole. Very different striping on those zebra there. You can see that one's got quite distinctive shadow stripes, making them look quite dirty compared to some of the others. Jean, you're asking, how do guides track animals in the wild? Gosh, it's an incredible skill to learn, but it is quite difficult to, well, I shouldn't say it's difficult to learn. It's something that most guides learn from their trackers, or by going to a tracker school, a tracker training school. There are a few tracker training schools in the country that you can go to learn to track. And there's two different kind of parts to tracking. The first is being able to identify the track, which a good field guide, using a good field guide and a good field guide alone, you can probably get that part quite easily. To be able to identify, is this a hyena, is this a leopard, is it a cheetah? You could probably become quite proficient at that just using a field guide. But the following of tracks is something that is a real science and an art, and that you're not really going to be able to learn from a field guide. You can learn some of the theory, what to look out for, but you really learn that through everyday practice under the mentorship of a really good tracker. And so if you're a guide and you're wanting to learn to track, you need to find yourself a good mentor, a good tracker who's willing to teach you what he knows. That's certainly how I learned my tracking skills. Hi, wildlife lady. Thank you. So it's good to have me on live at the waterhole. Yes, it's been a while. I haven't been on for a while, so really good to be back in the saddle, as it were. Okay, I believe we're going to go to Tau now because there's some nice game there. I think some elephants and zebra, a couple of things happening at Tau. So let's head over and see. Oh, wow. What a lovely little mixed group of animals here. Impala, zebra, wildebeest, some ellies. Interesting to watch the behavior of those impala there. Tau is quite a bit further north from where I've just recently been in the Sabi Sands, but it did look like there was a little bit of almost rutting behavior there. The males competing with one another a bit.
They go away birds at this camera seem to be constantly calling. Oh, there's some water back there as well. Kevin's asking, have I ever been to Tau? I actually have been to Madikwe, but not to Tau. So Madikwe has a few different game lodges. So I have been to the reserve itself many, many, many years ago. I haven't been there for a long time. But I'm trying to think which lodge we stayed at the time. So Tau used to be owned by And Beyond, which was a company that I worked for a long time. But there was another one in part of the kind of under the And Beyond umbrella. And I've gone blank on the name of it, but I went to that one, but not to Tau, and for the life of me I can't remember. But yes, Madikwe is a beautiful game reserve. Fascinating game reserve. I remember having amazing black rhino sightings there, great wild dog, African wild dog. What else? Really good brown hyena. It's a fascinating place to visit. But yes, I haven't visited Madikwe for a very long time now. Love watching the zebra, the way they arrange themselves so that they're all kind of facing different directions. Beautiful male waterbuck there as well. Wow. Eric, are you saying, do different species ever mount other species? Erica, I think it has happened in the past. You know, maybe an overexuberant male with very high testosterone levels that might be a bit frustrated might mount another species, but it's not common. Normally, species are very, very good at recognizing, you know, who they should or shouldn't mate with. And so it would be fairly uncommon for something like that to happen. But I'm not saying that it's impossible. I did hear many years ago of elephants in Pilanesberg Nature Reserve, young bulls who had been brought there from the Kruger Park. But the initial relocation of elephants to Pilanesberg from Kruger was done without bringing any of the bigger bulls across. The bigger bulls kind of discipline the youngsters and keep everything in line. They are quite a necessary part of the whole social structure and social hierarchy with these bull elephants. And without the influence of the older bulls, these young bulls just kind of ran amok in Pilanesberg. And I did hear some stories of young bull elephants in Pilanesberg mounting rhino. I also heard stories of them killing rhino. So they really were quite uncontrollable until they then realized their mistake. I think it was in the early days of relocating elephants, and the cost and the risks and just all the intricacies involved in trying to relocate very big bull elephants was quite difficult in those early days. And so they tried to just relocate the smaller ones because it was just easier, less risky, less costly. Pilanesberg is a very long way from Kruger, so it's a long way to transport a full-grown bull elephant. But then they realized that they actually had to bring some full-grown bulls across to discipline these youngsters who were really behaving very, very badly. And once they did that, once they brought the big bulls in, it all settled down and they never had any more problems.
But in those early days, there were lots of stories of bull elephants doing strange things. And I certainly did hear of them mounting rhinos at that point. That really looks like he is in seventh heaven, just wading in the water. Must be nice and cool in there, feeding on the beautiful lush green vegetation in the middle of the water. Trying to see what those little water birds are. They look like a teal, but it's just a little bit too far away for me to see exactly what they are. Alright, how are we getting closer look? I think we have some those weren't the ones that I thought were teals. Teals, there's definitely some moorhen there, but there were a couple of little water birds that look like they could be teals. That's a moorhen, which is lovely to see. Hannah, you're saying, would you call this a swamp? No, I don't think so. It's more just a... Oh, there's some Egyptian geese. It's more just a waterhole, really, or an inundated kind of a wetland area. But I wouldn't say it's a swamp. Gosh, there are lots and lots of water birds. Oh, those are what I thought were teal. Oh no, those are yellow-billed ducks. There we go. Nice close up of them. You can see the beautiful yellow on their beak.
Join me, Andrew Wistenholm, for an indescribable 6-night stay in the beautiful Albany of the Eastern Cape at Amakhala Game Reserve. Now, this trip is going to be action-packed with a lot of storytelling, adventure, as well as the opportunity to make everlasting memories. We'll be exploring the best of Amakhala by staying at 2 luxury lodges, which will be the perfect blend of comfort as well as wilderness. Book your spot today, and let's get ready to explore the wild beauty of Amakhala.
Wild Earth has launched a special fundraising drive for our non-profit, the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. We're raising funds to source, create, and showcase thousands of untold stories. Stories that spark real action in conservation and social impact. Visit our website to donate and explore how you can become a founding donor.
My full name is Emojis. Best part of my job is coming to see nature. Worst part of my job is logging. That's the worst thing ever, because you have to log amount of footage. You sit in front of that computer and yeah, you think of deleting the footage, but no, they need the footage. If I want a camel, probably a soccer player. I know some people don't believe me, but I'm very good, I'm very fast.
Welcome to Safari Spotlight. We'll be
And you pretend like you're a salesman, eh?
Got no idea what's going on this reserve.
Expecting the unexpected.
Are we stuck down there?
What am I trying to do?
So we have another giant of Mabula.
That was incredible.
This is unbelievable.
It's going to be a spectacular afternoon.
If you love watching Wild Earth, here's a little tip. Become a member. You can gain access to the channel ad-free, you can rewind and re-watch sightings, and you can join our Tuesday live safaris. There's also behind the scenes videos, fireside chats, and every Safari Live episode, whenever you want it. It's just a better way to stay connected to nature.
I obviously, if it's a bird I've never seen before, then I might try, but I prefer seeing the birds in the habitat that they should be in, not these funny rarities that get blown off course and end up in a country. I always feel quite sorry for them, and then they've got to contend with all these hundreds of twitchers. So yeah, I'm not a twitcher in that sense. I do keep a life list. I am doing my best to see as many species as I possibly can. But if I've seen a white-throated bee-eater in East Africa, I'm not going to race to go and see it down in South Africa just to add it to a South African list. I don't know if that answers your question. I prefer kind of watching birds and enjoying their behavior. Oh, there's a red-knobbed coot. Okay, we're going to head back to Founders. Let's see what's happening at Founders Lodge. Oh, wow. So we had one big bull here earlier. Now it looks like we might have, what have we got here? A couple of cows. So lovely to see these white rhino in a place where they are protected properly. White rhino, of course, being very water dependent. You will see them coming down to drink a bit more than the black rhino in areas where both species occur. Yeah, Book Makiri calling in the background. Beautiful bird, Book Makiri. Beautiful black and yellow markings on his chest. Not one that we see in Djuma or places like that. Or should I say in the Sabi Sands? Oh, got some, what is that, a zebra coming to join the rhino waterhole. See their ears just constantly working as they drink. Justin, you say they seem very cautious for such a big animal. Well, they generally are. They are pretty cautious. And I have noticed, in reserves where there's a lot more vigilance with the rhino, where they're being possibly moved around from one area to another to try and protect them, where they're being dehorned or monitored quite regularly, that they become a lot more wary of humans and human activity, and that's probably a good thing. But yes, they're always very cautious. I suppose with their eyesight not being that good, they're very, those ears are constantly working. You can hear them smelling, you can hear them breathing in through those nostrils. Their sense of smell is amazing. And they will definitely be very responsive to any smell or any sounds. Ursula, you're asking if they help each other with food or protection. I think certainly protection, yes. Food, no. I'm sure at this age they would both be kind of able to take care of their own food needs, but certainly protection. They'll look out for each other. I'm sure that if one of them was being attacked by something, they would probably try and help fend the predator off. There's not much other than humans that will go for a rhino this size. But certainly I have seen in rare cases where a pride of lions might show an interest in a little baby or a very young rhino, I have seen the whole group of adults working together to chase the lions away. So they certainly do help each other out in that regard. And just, keeping an eye out for each other, listening. They respond to each other's body language. So if one of them has heard something or smelt something, they'll communicate that to whoever else is in the group, and then they will respond accordingly. We watched the other rhino almost look like it was feeding on some of this rich red soil earlier, and they seem to be doing the same. Sure, it's probably for the minerals in the soil. Okay. Oh, I think our ground hornbills are still at Old Donyo, so let's go and see what's happening with the ground hornbills. That is always a super special sighting. Oh, wow. So earlier we had 5. I'm sure it's probably the same family group. They've probably been relaxing here most of the time. None of them seem to be particularly young. I'm sure there must be some in the group that aren't true adults yet. But the very, very young ones have got yellowish faces, and I haven't seen a yellowish face amongst this group, so they all are either adults or almost full adults. Very, very special to see ground hornbills here. Can be a bit difficult to see with the camera being, I don't think we can probably zoom in close enough to see, to differentiate female and male. I'm sure most of you know that the females have got a bluish tinge to their throat. So just beneath the beak on the throat is a bluish tinge, but I was struggling there to see. Now that doesn't look like, that one doesn't look like he has any blue, so I'm going with him being a male. Sharon, you're asking if these birds nest on the ground. Actually, they don't, weirdly, because their name says ground hornbill, and they spend a lot of time on the ground. They forage on the ground for insects and snakes and reptiles. I've even seen them catching scrub hares and feeding on scrub hares. So there's a lot that they eat that is on the ground. But they nest in trees, and they actually need rather large trees with large cavities, because if you see how big they are, you can imagine how big the nest needs to be, and they nest in cavities in trees. So that is a limiting factor for them. There needs to be enough large trees with natural cavities in them for the ground hornbills to nest. And if there aren't enough large trees, then there are going to be fewer nest sites and fewer ground hornbills. So in areas where elephants are pushing over a lot of the big trees, it can be a problem for them. I know that there are organizations that are now looking at putting up nesting boxes for the ground hornbills to try and remove that limitation from their population. So even in protected areas, putting in these nesting boxes that have been specially adapted for ground hornbills. I think it's quite a new thing that's happening in protected areas, and we'll have to see how it transpires, how successful it's going to be. I do think that I seem to remember Eric saying that there are a few of those nesting boxes in Sandringham, so it'll be really interesting to see whether our ground hornbills nest there. Lots of little seed eaters and things coming down to drink. Okay, so apparently there has been one nesting box seen on Drive. So I wonder how many have gone in, but that'll definitely be something that'll be interesting to watch going forward and see whether those nesting boxes are actually successful for the ground hornbills. Ivan, you're asking if all birds have brood patches and how long do they keep them? So Ivan, as far as I know, if a bird is sitting on eggs or chicks, then it will have a brood patch. As to how long they keep them, I'm not entirely sure. Let's see if we can find that out for you. So brood patches, it says, last the duration of the nesting season. So that would make sense. So while the nesting season is ongoing, the brood patch is there. And then once the bird has finished brooding over its eggs and its chicks, then the feathers grow again on the brood patch. That kind of makes sense. Look at these beautiful butterflies. They all look like citrus swallowtails. Well, not all. There's a lot of smaller butterflies, but those big ones with the yellow on the wings, yellow spots, look like citrus swallowtails, which are magnificent butterflies. As the name suggests, their larvae feed on plants in the citrus family. So that does mean lemons and oranges and things like that, but there are many wild plants that belong to the same family, so it's not. We do talk a lot about the whole, worldwide crash in insect numbers, and it's often related to these massive agricultural systems where crops are just mass sprayed with organic pesticides. Calling it organic pesticides, not organic, with pesticides, with organophosphates and all kinds of horrible chemicals. And it has a drastic impact on insect life. And so areas that don't have as much of these horrible pesticides are going to have far more insects. I mean, the butterflies here are just beautiful. Lots of different species of yellows and whites there. You can hear the helmeted guinea fowls in the background. I just never get tired of watching butterflies. They are just so beautiful. And yes, it is lovely to think that their presence here is a sign that the ecosystem is healthy. And their presence in such numbers must mean good things for the environment there. Jason, you're saying you've seen butterflies on carcasses before. Yes, so have I, and that's again for the same reasons. You know, they don't only need, you know, sugars that they can get from nectar, but there are various salts and minerals that they're not going to get from nectar that their bodies need, and so they have to look for other sources for those salts and minerals. And you know, urine and, you know, body fluids of animals is one of the ways of getting those salts and minerals. They'll even drink, they have been recorded kind of drinking the tears in the corners of the eyes of certain animals, or, you know, moisture coming from nostrils and things like that. Anyway, let's go back to Tau. There seems to be a lot happening at Tau today. So let's go and see what is transpiring there. Lovely, peaceful scene of drinking zebra. Obviously not too concerned about any crocodiles, judging by how far he was into the water. Always something special about seeing a herd of zebra together, for all their stripes kind of combining to create that dazzle effect that gives them their collective name. Hannah, you're asking if you ever see different species playing with each other. I have. I have seen, just trying to think, baboons and monkeys having a little play together. I have seen zebra foals playing with wildebeest calves before. Just trying to think what other examples I have of different species playing with each other. It definitely happens. Again, it's not something that's super common, but it certainly does happen. Especially with youngsters, you know, the babies kind of learning the ropes, learning what they should and shouldn't do.
He is such a handsome young male. Look at that pose. Absolutely beautiful.
My name is Takudzwa Panda Msesani. My scariest moment is when it happened twice. The other time I was with Cedric and the other time I was with Steve. And all those times, it was a black mamba. My favorite meal in camp is gonna be burger and chips.
This is what they call a shambi, a family, a whole herd of elephants.
But nature is beyond amazing. Nature is just everything.
We'd love to hear from you. Questions, comments about biology, Africa, safari.
She's using her tail like a monkey.
Very red, kind of iron-rich soil. Yes, so there's definitely a hierarchy, and it becomes more and more apparent as the water gets less and less. So when the water dries up and there's less of it, then you're going to see a lot more competition for the water, and then you'll see generally bigger species kind of out competing and bullying the smaller species for places at the waterhole. That's a definite thing. Oh, there's the pearl-spotted owl calling again. Sometimes it can be drongos imitating pearl-spotted owls, but that actually sounds like it probably is a pearl-spotted owl. Some drongos do it so well, it can be quite difficult to tell the real pearl-spotted from the drongo imitation. I have a little red-capped robin chat in my garden who is very good at imitating crowned eagles. I often get fooled and go rushing out into the garden to see the crowned eagle above, and then realize that it's my little robin chat. Amazing species diversity here today. Saw some long distance views of some springbuck in the background earlier. Waterbuck, there's zebra, wildebeest, elephants. It's all happening here. Oh, there we go. The zebras are definitely making way for the elephant, although he didn't really look like he was grumpy with them, but they obviously have had experiences in the past which made them decide, okay, let's just move out of his way. It's probably better for us to stay out of his way. Tracy, you're saying you have to visit this place. It's incredible. Yeah, Madikwe is a really lovely reserve to visit. It's right up in the north of South Africa on the border with Botswana, and amazing species diversity up there, and some really interesting landscapes with the mountains, and yeah, very, very worthwhile visit to go to Madikwe. Oh, and with the rest of the elephant family coming down, we're going to have to say goodbye shortly. It's been a lovely afternoon. I've thoroughly enjoyed all the species diversity. I think my highlights have been the ground hornbills and the butterflies at Old Donya for the day. I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have. And looking forward to coming back tomorrow with all of you. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful afternoon further, everybody. Goodbye for now.